call the meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities, and it's the Monday, May 20th meeting at 1 p.m. I would like a mover for approval of the agenda, please.
So moved.
I have a mover. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Carried, Deputy Mayor, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Mr. Hunter?
Action item 7, subsection E and F. Due to the fact these are being tendered by Tuckberry Construction and they're tendered out of Hunter Quarries.
And the necessary paperwork has been filed?
Has been.
Thank you. Anyone else?
None.
Hearing none, thank you. Okay, business arising from previous Committee of the Whole meetings, if any, and on your hard copies, that is page number 1 to 7. Any business arising?
None here?
Hearing none, I just have one item, and it's on section 6A, discussion item 6A, and it is, there was a consensus from the committee that a letter be prepared and sent to Augusta and Prescott, and that the letter be addressed to the mayor and members of council. Is that, did that happen?
Didn't happen.
Did not happen?
No.
Okay.
Yet. Yet.
Okay, thank you. You hearing everything okay, Mark?
Yeah, not too bad.
Okay, we're now moving to delegations and presentations, and I believe there are none. And do we have any discussion items? None. And we're now at 7A, which is the application for the zoning bylaw amendment for the Johnstown mini storage. And Wendy, you're going to highlight this for us, please.
Mark, can you hear me okay if I talk from here?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for letting me bring these applications forward to this committee. As you know, the Community Development Committee did not meet this month, but I appreciate the opportunity to move these planning applications forward with this committee. Not off to a good start. There's an error in the first paragraph of my action item for the Johnstown mini storage unit. Neil and Ellen Purvis, who are the owners of Johnstown Mini Storage, have applied for a zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning from residential first density and highway commercial exception 4 to highway commercial with a special exception. So I actually did a lot of work and a lot of research, a lot of consultation to determine the best zoning for this property with the applicant and with our planners. So I'm sorry that it wasn't clear in the staff report here, but hopefully I can redeem myself. So the reason that so much consultation had to go into this application is there's a bit of history here. Back in 2004, the property was zoned R1A, which is today's equivalent to residential first density. There was a zoning bylaw amendment granted to change a portion of the property to highway commercial special exception 4. So the goal was to build a storage facility, but leave the option available to build a home by leaving some of the property zoned residential. In the highway commercial special exception 4 zone, you could have a storage facility, but the exception meant you couldn't have dangerous goods, and the setbacks for the property, instead of the 10 meters that's normally allowed in highway commercial, were 20 meters. And this zoning bylaw amendment was approved in 2004. The property, you guys have this diagram here, it's the purple and orange one, so it shows that there's most of the property zoned highway commercial. That was changed, and this strip here was left as residential, the purple strip there. Just a few months later, we entered into a site plan control agreement with the owners. The site plan shows some RV storage to the north of the property, a proposed dwelling unit that's located within the residential portion of the property.
Where?
I think you have the site plan control agreement in your package. Here, there's RV storage
I don't
here.
have that.
Is it the small one on the last page?
Yeah.
Page 17?
I don't have my page card number, but it looks like this.
Yeah, it is.
17 and 19.
Page must be.
17 and 9.
17 of 90 in your hard package.
So the site plan control agreement that was approved in 2004 has this proposed RV storage to the north. It has a proposed dwelling unit at the south end of the property and 6 storage buildings. Interesting to note that 2 of those storage buildings are located within the residential portion of the property, which isn't a permitted use. And also, in the zoning bylaw amendment, we made that exception to say the setbacks had to be 20 meters. There's only 13 meters here. So I reviewed the committee notes from back in 2004. It's not clear why that site plan was approved, but it was in 2004. So fast forward to 2020, 3 of the 6 storage facilities have been built already. Neither of them are within the residential portion, so they're fine. The northern portion of the land is still vacant. There aren't any RVs stored there right now. And the dwelling unit that's on the site plan has not yet been built. Now the owner wishes to sell their property and he wants to sell it with the correct zoning in place so that the new owner could carry on with that site plan as it's already been approved.
Just stop for a second.
Sure.
Because I've lost you. Matter of fact, I lost you at the beginning because there's a problem with the first paragraph. And so I really don't know what we're talking about. So where is the proposed residential dwelling?
There's a proposed residential dwelling right here.
On the, fronting on County Road 2.
Yes.
And that's the proposal?
This site plan has already been approved. This was approved in 2004. It hasn't been built yet.
It's gonna be a problem for me. There's a through the chair, there's a King Street marked on my map. Is that an unopened road allowance?
I believe it is, yes.
So, take me back to where you started, because I don't understand what we're doing here.
Sure. So the property right now is zoned highway commercial with a special exception 4, and then this purple strip right here is zoned residential.
So that purple strip is part of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's all on the same property, so that one piece of property has 2 different zones on it.
Well, how does that map that you've got there relate to this map on page 17?
Mm-hmm. So
Where's
it's
the
same
King,
piece of
where's the
property.
King Street?
Just that this is from today, from the GIS viewer today, and that site plan was approved in 2004.
Yeah, but it's still a separate parcel. Or isn't it? And this map that I've got here, this one,
Mhm.
it's only got 2 of the units.
Mm-hmm. Because the GIS satellite imagery was done in 2014, and the 3rd one has been built since then.
Sorry, it's this portion here,
The purple is zoned residential.
which is residential. And
It's
I
all
take
red,
it the
it's
little,
all
I take it the little square in the front is where the gas station is now,
Yeah,
is that
so not
correct?
part of the subject property.
Right. So then this King Street that is marked here has to be almost,
Where that motel is,
yeah, well,
it's not a part of the
no,
subject
Queen
property.
Street is next to the motel, isn't it?
No, Queen Street is where this property has access from.
That's the eastern portion of this,
Yes, yeah.
property, but the western portion is what we call King Street here, which must be then right up through here.
I think it's where the motel is here.
Yes, I
It
see
isn't
where the
part of the
motel.
subject
Yes,
is, so I
okay,
haven't
I
done
see
any
the motel
research
now,
about
yes.
King Street.
Okay, I see the motel now.
Is there a way, there's a way off of that on Queen Street, isn't it, to get to that residential property?
This entire property is accessed on Queen Street.
Yeah, so is that where the house, is that where they'd be using the driveway for the residential houses off that driveway?
If they build a house, then they would either have to apply to the counties for an entranceway permit or access it
From there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But the proposal though is to build a residential house between a motel and a gas station.
The already approved site plan from 2004
No.
had something,
Yeah, but it doesn't exist.
Right.
That's what they're proposing.
Yeah, so that's what they proposed in 2004.
Right.
And they got approval in 2004.
Correct,
But he didn't act on it.
that is correct.
This is 2020.
Correct.
You snooze, you lose. Doesn't fit. My mind.
I
How do you
think,
see it fits?
but I think the bigger issue is that residential section with respect to the storage units. That is the bigger concern.
So if the 3 more storage units go in, which they can do, how many then will be on that residential?
2 of the
6.
proposed storage units would land on that residential property. So the application that they've made is to make this entire property highway commercial with a special exception.
No residential.
Well, highway commercial allows an accessory dwelling
Allows
unit.
for accessory.
So it would allow them to carry out that site plan control agreement as approved in 2004. If we rezone the entire property to highway commercial, I would say the special exception needs to be that they are not allowed to store dangerous goods, which is already, which was already the original exception on the property. And the exception, nope, that's it. So they're allowed to have an accessory dwelling, it's in the highway commercial zone. And previously, we said there had to be 20-meter setbacks, we just wouldn't use that exception anymore because it's not there today.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want to turn the purple into residential.
The purple is residential, I would turn the orange.
I'm sorry,
Or, yeah, the purple into orange,
purple into orange.
highway commercial, yeah.
So then a house can be built there,
Yeah,
which is really called an accessory building.
yeah.
Now, is this what the current owner wants to do, or is this looking, if it's for sale,
The current owner would like to sell the property,
with that
with
change?
zoned properly so that the new owner could carry out that site plan control agreement if they chose to.
We don't know who he's selling it to, do we?
I don't know who he's selling it to.
It seems strange that he would already suspect that somebody wants to build a house there.
If I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
The way that the 2004, if I'm not catching this right, correct me, but the way that the 2004 is it limits the purple piece to residential only. Is that,
Yes,
so
yes.
this way, it allows the entire piece to become highway commercial,
Mhm.
but doesn't exclude the possibility of someone building a home on the pre-approved purple portion.
Yes, exactly.
That's my way of, when I read it, that's my way of getting it. I didn't realize I actually read the first paragraph completely wrong.
I didn't
I just
either.
assumed they wanted to make all of it orange
Mhm.
and remove the purple, but still retain the possibility of someone or a potential buyer being able to execute that 2004 possibility of having a home built there.
Mhm.
That's the way I understood it. It sounds like maybe everybody else didn't feel it the same way.
Now, the recommendation here is only for staff, to direct staff to proceed with scheduling a public meeting.
Yes.
Nothing to do with making these changes.
Everything to do with it.
Well, we're not asking to approve the zoning bylaw amendment application,
Here.
yet, we're just asking to, schedule a public meeting once it's safe to do so, so that we can hear comments from the public.
Right.
And then my next report would ask for approval if that's.
Right. Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not comfortable with this at all. First of all, I find the briefing note. What has been the involvement of our planner on this? Penance.
I've consulted with Jordan, who works for Pets, on the application.
So do we have a recommendation from him with a letterhead that says no attack? I'm dealing with a situation right now where we did in fact follow all of the zoning bylaws. Right to the T as near as I can figure out. But it's created a major problem. And I don't wanna get into another situation here unless I've got a recommendation from a planner in front of me, a written recommendation from a planner. And I'm not the least bit happy with the concept. When that 2004 site plan was approved, but I mean, these things, I don't know that they don't have an expiry date. I guess if they don't, they don't, but. And the schematics here are, I mean, I'm still looking for King Street on this page 11 of 60, 90, page 11 of 90. The schematics are, they leave a lot out. So I'm not even prepared to go to a public meeting, because you go to a public meeting, it implies that it's already, it implies that we've already basically approved the concept, and we're just going out for public consultation of the change, of the zoning change.
Mr. Packwood, you want in here?
I'm here.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I've heard lots.
Okay. Well,
And there's a storage unit on a residential lot that isn't supposed to be there. So that's an infringement of the site plan that they were approved on. So they got an approved site plan in 2004, ignored it, built their third storage facility on a residential, okay, correct me.
Respectfully, they had the zoning bylaw amendment done and then got the site plan approved based on that zoning bylaw amendment. They've been building as per what's been approved, and they haven't built a storage unit on that residential portion yet.
The third one, you said that it was on the,
They built 3 of the 6, and it's just the 2 end ones that would be in the residential portion. They
When they're
built
built.
1, 2, 3, and there's 2 proposed ones for here that aren't built yet.
You can still build a fourth one and still
They
be,
could still build a 4th one.
and still be okay.
Yes.
okay, so on this map, on page 17 of 40, there must be a line that goes here somehow.
Yes. You got it.
Well, what's the setback on that line?
Yeah, I can see your, yeah.
So Wendy, is that, those 2, they can't build there then, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And this one here, and that's off of Queen Street, and that's where that driveway is?
Yeah. We approved this site plan saying they could build there, but it's not actually zoned appropriately for,
And they haven't built there either?
they have not built there
No,
yet.
and this is where the house is that they wanna build, right here,
Yep.
on 11 and 12, right? Is that right?
by that 12 there, that's the proposed zoning.
And what's allowed in there?
Looks like just some shrubs.
There's a bunch of hydro,
So.
solar panels there somewhere?
Yeah, the solar panels don't show.
I have to go to Google Earth.
They're not on this site plan at all.
So, I guess from a simple perspective, at least the way that I look at it, if you don't make any changes to the zoning, they can, they can still build a house there, because it's a residential zone. They just can't, add,
Wait a minute now. They can still build a house where?
where they had proposed to build a house in 2004.
And then you said, because it's a residential zone. It's not a residential zone. It's a permitted use in a highway commercial zone.
Okay, as it stands right now, it's zone, that portion of that property is zoned residential first density, which is the purple area.
Purple area, yeah.
Well,
So
where
he
does
can
that-
build a house, he just can't build 2 more storage units.
Correct.
Correct.
He can build 1 more, but not 3 more, I guess.
Yes.
There's
That is
2 that he
correct.
wouldn't be able to build.
That is correct. So by changing the entire property to the highway commercial exception,
He could do that.
he could build storage unit 5 and 6, and as an accessory use, would be able to put a dwelling on.
And if he leaves everything the same, he can still put a house up there, or the new owners could.
Correct.
On top.
Correct. They just couldn't expand out to put storage unit 5 and 6.
But another one, which is 4, yeah.
But why couldn't they?
Because
If the
where.
site plan was approved though, why couldn't they?
Because
Like, I get that they wanna bring it whole and make it palatable for a sale. But if the site plan was already approved in 2004 and it doesn't have an expiry date on it, why couldn't they still build? I mean, it passed the muster then.
Well, I guess I looked that two wrongs don't make a right.
Sure.
It would need to be corrected, and if we're looking at that zoning, and they go to put storage unit 5 on there, we're saying you don't have the setbacks. Because a portion of that is in the residential section.
We'd be going against what we had already approved. Interesting.
It's not a great situation, but, what Wendy is proposing,
better.
it really corrects it to what it probably should have been in 2004.
On the orange lot where the 2, where my drawing shows 2 storage units, there's a small orange unit there. Do we know what that is? Is that a building or what?
I don't know.
I'm trying to get it here.
Where did, what's the source of this imagery here?
That's from the county's GIS system.
We know that the lot lines don't show accurately, but, I mean, I can't believe this is from the counties. What vintage is this? You know,
I just pulled that up within a week or 2 ago.
this one here?
Yeah, yeah. And if you look at the zoning bylaw amendment that was approved in 2004, you can see the zoning, I just didn't think it was as clear, so that's why I pulled up the county's GIS one. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment that was approved. It's really tough to see.
Can't see anything.
Yeah, yeah, so that's why I blew it up there.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm back to my original thing. I'd like to see a full report from the planner on this. You know what, when I bought my lot in 1990, that lot could have been divided into 3. That was the law, the rules at the time under which I bought it. By the time I got around to applying for a severance, the rules had all changed, and I can't do that anymore. So that's just something I have to live with. Things change, and you get caught in the change.
So does that fit into your previous comment where you snoozed a little too long?
Yep, it sure is. And that's what's happened here.
But it hasn't, because they can still build a home there.
Well, first of all, they have to clear up some of their deficiencies. As I understand, there's still a problem here of some sort. I can't just recall. There's a problem, Wendy alluded to it earlier in her first talk. What is the,
That we approved a site plan without proper setbacks or zoning.
so,
But that's just for the storage units.
Yes.
Is,
There's nothing to do with the house. House still can be built regardless.
yes, it can.
I personally, I just don't see the problem with going ahead and changing the zone. It just clears up a whole bunch of mess here. A site plan should have never been approved in the first place because it was going on to a residential zone. Setbacks were adhered to. So by changing it all of the zoning over here, all we gain is by getting rid of a mess here. He doesn't gain anything only that he can go ahead and maintain his site plan that he had by going ahead and building another 2 units. So we can approve this and change the zoning and get a mess cleared up, or we can not approve it. He can end up taking us to court when he wants to build these 2 other buildings, because we already approved the site plan on a residential zone, so. And he'll likely win if we approve the site plan. So I just say go ahead and change the zoning over and be done with it.
run that by me again, John, because I didn't follow you. Excuse me,
Site
Council.
plan was approved. Site plan, they don't run out, there's no time frame on the site plan.
Okay,
Township was in the wrong because they approved the site plan to build those last two storage units on a residential property, which isn't allowed.
okay, that's the last 2.
Last 2, 5 and 6.
Yeah.
The house, he can build regardless, so whether we change it or not. So why not just change it? Only difference is, now the site plan is legal. Because
And
it's
he
all
can put, and
zoned,
he can put 2 more units
and
on.
he can put us 2 more units on, and we don't got our head stuck in a hole here trying to defend something that shouldn't have happened.
You can put 2 units on, but not 3.
Well, he can put the 2 more, he can put number 4 now, because it's still in highway commercial zone. Just the 5 and 6 is in the residential zone.
Can I try?
There's 3 units already there, but it
Yep.
doesn't show it here.
Yep.
So we can put 1 more on.
Yeah. Yep. Must be just along the edge of the building here.
Right, which would give them room for 4, then 5 and 6 here, which brings them down to the front, and that's the area that you're saying they could
So would he be building where the shrubs are, the new home?
I don't know.
So,
But
I
that's
know.
that's the whole
I
section.
know,
There's your U.
we're really
Right,
focused
there's
on
the
the
back of
home,
the- there's
the
the back, there's the
individual in
entrance
2004,
of-
so at some point, I'm probably gonna build my
Right,
home
it
there.
makes more sense when you look at it.
They have it.
Oh, yeah, this-
Right,
We
it's
don't
much
even
better.
know
Yeah,
it's
it's much
the
better.
Yeah.
And they
I
just
know,
want it,
I know what you're saying,
Yeah.
just wants it,
This shows.
Just wants it cleared up so we
and I
can
think,
sell it.
and I think on our side, we just
I don't know
want,
if you got it inside.
Is this
And even if they do apply to build a home sometime, they're gonna have to
No,
meet
it's
all
open
the
plans, I think.
criteria is to get a building
That's this
permit
little,
anyways.
this little.
That doesn't mean he's not gonna be able to
That
build
little
it.
shop right
Unless
there,
some of those
so if I go
criteria
back
are met.
Yeah.
So why not just go ahead with the application?
Go ahead with the vote, we've been.
I can't pull it over.
Yeah.
Move on.
Like it should have never been
That's it.
approved in the first place. It
In
got-
204,
got-
it
Got
just looks like
approved,
it's-
so
Must.
now we're
Are
looking
you
like
on
we're-
that list,
Hey,
Mr. Hunter?
No, he wasn't.
don't
Look,
look
he-
at-
Look who was.
And it's kind of nice. to
I
see
remember this. I remember this. But I don't remember anything at all. And
From
you gotta
this, you
remember,
can
this
see
is
that,
what,
and it is accessed
16
right
years
here
ago.
behind the hotel.
I don't recall anything about a house being mentioned.
Yeah, that's-
And it
It
doesn't.
it was just to bring
It's
story.
not, we're not
points.
changing nothing here, so it doesn't matter. He can go on.
Hold on, let me go back to Google.
We don't need a planners.
Well, and,
We had
and.
two side conversations.
Just clearing up a mess around.
I think this is what
There's
we're
the,
doing.
As part of our process, we will provide a planner's report after the public meeting. Once they have all the information and they hear any concerns from other residents, our planners would prepare a report addressing any of those concerns if there are some, and then before the final decision is made, there would be a planner's report included in the package.
Which will come back to us.
Does that help you, Mr. Mayor, with your
No,
decision?
I think, you know, in the conversation we were having, we we're looking at it from Google Earth.
Okay.
And I think I understand the mayor's concern is that there is a, I believe that's an open road allowance.
First Street.
Called First Street. And from Google Earth, it's obviously used quite well. And it's the divider between the top orange portion of the document that you have in front of you. And I think that that's one of the stumbling points that the mayor's bringing, is that unopened road allowance is opened, and it's actually looks like it's being fairly well traveled from the picture that from the look above that we're looking at. It connects in behind where the motel and the house beside is.
So the applicant isn't planning to build anything on this northern portion of the property. That's kind of isolated by that road allowance. We consider that as part of the application. He thought maybe a severance, but because it doesn't have frontage on a publicly maintained road, not going forward with that idea. He's just, in the site plan agreement, it is listed as proposed RV storage. So no buildings on that portion of the lot.
Couldn't build on there anyway unless he applied to close that street.
Yeah, he can be considered, requesting this be, stopped, closed up and conveyed, but he understands that his neighbors use that regularly to access their properties and didn't wanna ask for that, if it was gonna mean his neighbors wouldn't have access.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, I'm looking for some guidance here, staff. Should we change the recommendation to read that a planner's, planner's information would be sought after the public meeting? Or would that be normal?
Our regular process would be to provide a planner's report after the public meeting and before the final decision is made. You could request a
I'd like to see the
planner's.
planner's report before the public meeting. There's lots of time to get it. We have no idea when we're gonna be able to schedule a public meeting.
So through the chair, we would be looking at having two planners reports for this particular item? One before the public meeting, and then one following?
That seems to be the inference. Were you, Mr. Mayor, were you aware that there would be two
Well-
planners reports then?
Well,
Because
maybe-
there would be the initial planners report, and then after the public meeting, there may be concerns, questions and whatnot, so we'd have to get another planners report.
Well, I just feel more comfortable having that expertise in writing.
Before or after?
Both, if it's necessary. Maybe it wouldn't be necessary, I don't know.
if there was no questions or concern that come up at the public meeting, we wouldn't have to have a planning report, would we, if we already got one?
Still have to have planners.
Or would you have to have one anyway?
We
I guess
typically
that's-
would have a final one. I guess we could ask them not to prepare a final one in this.
Well, I think if it's common, we do, I think we should carry on. I'm at quite a disadvantage here, because my planning experience is very limited,
I appreciate that.
so, well, we just don't, yes, Mr. Counselor.
You go ahead, you're the chair. I was just gonna make a motion that we take the recommendation of staff.
And I was just going to ask for a motion. Okay, we have a recommendation in front of us, and, do I have a mover? Do I have a seconder? Counselor Hunter, thank you. All right, I'm going to call the question as to whether we go ahead with the recommendation with the understanding that we will get 2 planning if we need it. One before the public meeting and then one after if we need it.
we kinda need to know if we're looking for 2, potentially 2 reports or just one.
Well, that's what I just said, with the understanding that we would get 2.
I don't really see any
No.
purpose of having a first, if we get complaints and stuff about it, then the planner deals with them all. They get turned down,
After
period, so,
Our
yeah,
public meeting.
Well,
you're paying twice.
if we're comfortable with that, then that's the way we can go. I just don't know how to word or how to bring forward the recommendation.
Just what it reads.
Yeah,
Just leave it the way it is? All right.
I recommend, that's my motion.
I second it.
Okay, I'm going to call the question then, and, Mark, can you hear us okay?
Yes,
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the motion, you understand what it is?
I didn't catch all of it. Could you reread the motion for me, please?
It's exactly what you have in front of you.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, we have a mover, we have a seconder, I'm calling the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, carried, Mark?
Yay,
Yay, thank you.
I'd like my opposition recorded, please. In the minutes, please.
Is that possible?
If a recorded vote is
Call a
requested.
recorded vote then.
Then we'll call a recorded vote, and I don't have any paperwork with a recorded vote in front of me.
I think our clerk likely already got a copy.
You have that, so have you got the recorded vote?
If you can do it one final time to make it official, it'd
Okay,
be great.
this is for the official, all in favor?
I'm gonna call my name.
I call my name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Hunter,
Yay,
Deputy Mayor,
Yay.
Mr. Mayor,
Nay.
Counselor Diddlebaugh,
Yay.
and I am yay.
Mr. Patrick.
And Mr. Packwood?
yay.
Yay, thank you. Okay, thank you, that's carried. Thank you for your patience, folks. Okay, now that brings us to 7B, which is a site plan control agreement for 7 Henderson Street, which is also known as Boundary Street School, or Boundary School.
No,
Well,
Centennial.
I'm sorry, Centennial School, correct. And Wendy, I believe you're going to highlight this as well.
I sure am.
And this is a thick one.
Yep. Okay, so an application for site plan control agreement at 7 Henderson Street. This is for Centennial 67 School. The school board would like to update their parking area and include a bus lane. They're also looking to reconfigure some of their play structures, which includes making them more accessible. The property is located within a wellhead protection area, so we've asked for a stormwater management report, and we've asked our friends at South Nation Conservation Authority to review it. South Nation has provided an initial review, and their letter is included in your package there. They requested some additional information from the applicant, which the applicant has addressed at this time. The applicant's response is also included in your package. So they've addressed the Conservation Authority's concerns We are still waiting for the Conservation Authority to provide final feedback from their engineer's review. We expect any changes that are a result of this review to be really minor, if any at all. Our road superintendent and our CBO have both reviewed the site plan, and they're satisfied with the plans. So we ask today that committee recommend that council enter into a site plan control agreement for 7 Henderson Street once the applicant has satisfied the Conservation Authority's concerns to the satisfaction of the township.
And the applicant being the school board? correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a recommendation with this. You've had a chance to study all the package. Do I have a, well, first of all, any discussion regarding this?
For me, I just, you know, in an effort to keep things moving for the school board, should they want to, do we know if this is for construction this year or for next year?
This year.
It's for this year. So in the wording, the once that portion, are like, is the wording of the recommendation a possibility to slow it down so that that work doesn't happen this year in the way that it's written? I just don't wanna see something that we know is going to get worked out between the Conservation Authority and the engineers of the school board and the United Counties. Do we really wanna hold it up at a township level? Like,
So through the chair, actually, it's just the opposite. This is set up to
speed
expedite
it
the
through.
process so
Okay,
that they can
good.
get moving on it.
Okay, no, any other discussion?
happy to move it as written.
Okay, I have a mover with Deputy Mayor. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Dillabaugh, thank you. All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Thank you, Mark. Now, this brings us to 7C, the boat launch docks. There is no recommendation with this. This is discussion. So, and for discussion and or consideration, so. I have some questions, but I'll wait, I'll wait until I've gone around the table. So I'll start at my far left, which is Councilor Dillabaugh. Do you have any discussion with this?
Yes, thank you, duly chair. Could we, duly chair, what's the status on our new docks?
Well, the briefing note tells us that they're not ready at currently.
Well, we're not sure. Are they?
Through the chair, I spoke to him last Wednesday, and so the comments that are in the information, or the briefing note basically indicate that they are not ready yet. He is having a hard time getting some of the supplies because of his manufacturers. Some are open, some are not. So he can't guarantee that they'll be ready. I have to call him on Thursday of this week to get an update.
Anything else, Councilor?
And if not, the old docks can go in, is that right?
Through the
For
chair,
May 2nd.
the old docks can go in, provided the water levels stay the way they are.
So should we start getting them in tomorrow? Seeing the water level's okay and not take a chance that we're not gonna get our docks for opening day. At least we have docks ready for opening day on May 2nd.
Oh, maybe you can answer this, Mike, I don't know. If the water level, how much higher does the water level have to increase before the docks are, or a portion of them are underwater?
Through the chair, if the water levels stay relatively where they are right now, I think we'll be okay to put them in The plan is, normally we put them in the Wednesday prior to the opening weekend. And as indicated in the information, or the briefing note, it is Saturday, May the 2nd. I know there was some discussion at the previous council meeting that it was the 9th, but it is actual May 2nd.
Yes.
For the Cardinal,
North to the north.
yeah. So,
Mr. Mayor? Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Councilor.
okay. And on the items of consideration, boat launches remain closed up down the stream. I don't have a problem charging, but I have a problem if we're just gonna be a one-shot deal, opening day. In other words, I'm more than happy to charge a regular fee of some sort year-round, but not for that day. I think there's a lot of people who've been cooped up, and they got enough on their minds. We're not out here to gouge them because we're the only boat ramp that could be open. So I'm for charging, but it's gonna be year-round, starting from May to October. And OPP, I'm not sure if we need the OPP involved in that. I'll let some other guys get involved in that one. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I'm still unsure why we don't have, there's two issues here, Mr. Chairman, and I think they should be separated. The first issue is the issue of the docks and why the docks are not ready. Then the second issue is the installation of the docks. Actually, the third issue is whether or not the boat launch is going to be open or not. So I think there are three separate issues that should be dealt with, three separate discussions. Now, going back to the first issue, I'm at a loss as to why the boat docks, which we clearly signaled last year would be a high priority on this year's capital, and I do not understand why they're not ready. Second, the installation of those docks, I think we made it very clear last year that we expected them to be installed and that staff would find a way to install them. Didn't have anything to do with the water levels. Floating docks float. And then the third issue is the boat launch ramp, which I think is a separate discussion.
Anything else? Okay. To the mayor's first topic, Mike, I was under the impression at our last meeting when we discussed this, that your builder had said 2 weeks, no problem. I think those were your exact words. What's happened in the meantime?
We, through the chair, we've ran into, as the briefing note indicates, some of his suppliers in manufacturing companies that he deals with are currently closed right now. When I met him on site 3 weeks ago, before basically this COVID-19 pandemic started in a serious nature, there was no issue with him having them ready for the May 2nd weekend. There's nothing else that I can do other than, like I said, we can put the old docks in until such time, but I would rather wait until I'd rather wait until I'm able to speak to him. Maybe even if he can provide us with one set of docks, and then we would only put one old dock in. I'd rather wait, and that is a possibility that we discussed last week, but until such time that I'm able to speak to him again this week, and whether or not he's able to get them in, that's basically where we're at.
I just, to be quite truthful, I just find it rather strange that a dock builder, it sounds to me like he's got his eggs in one basket. In other words, if one supplier lets him down, does he not have other suppliers that he could go to? I guess that's a question that I guess you have to ask him. Okay, we've certainly heard that. And as far as the boat ramp being open, my personal opinion will be that we should have it open as for opening day. Councilor Gilmore, you wanted in?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Mike, how long was, you said, is he 3/4 away? Is he 80% done? Is he 90% done when you were talking to him last week?
We didn't get into this, through the chair, we didn't get into the specifics as to the percentage of completion.
So you don't know if he's got 1 day or 2 days left of work, once he gets the material?
No, I do not.
Deputy Mayor?
I think for me, the readiness of the docks, would prefer to put off for a different discussion. It appears to me that those docks are not gonna be ready. I'd rather deal with what we can do instead of what we can't do. So for me, the dock issue has been going on for a year, and I'm starting to get super frustrated about it. But I think, again, for me, it is the May the 2nd boat launch fishing season, what we can do. And I think I know what we can do 100% for sure, and that's get our old docks in, get them ready. If we're going to have the launch open, then that seems to be the best course, in my opinion. However, having the launch open creates a lot of issues. It takes a provincial recommendation of, emergency services and recreation things being closed, and it uses one of their emergency control group meetings and recommendations from it that caused a lot of confusion as to what boat launches can be open and which ones can't be open, and we're gonna use that to open our boat launch. And while I support that 100%, I think other neighboring municipalities and other people around us may not choose to do that, and they may stick with the emergency order. And I think if they do that, it's gonna put a lot of strain on our small boat launch, the one we have and the second one that really isn't much of a boat launch, but it could put a lot of strain on those resources and put a lot of our staff that would have to be put in place, put a lot of strain and a lot of responsibility on them. And if it continued further than that, and there was a need for OPP, because our staff felt threatened by people who wanted to put boats in or got logged in a great big huge lineup, it creates an enormous problem there, and then you could have police or needing some security, and then you've got costs associated with that, and it's not just one weekend. It could be quite a time before boat launches are open. I know the several municipalities that I've reached out to have indicated so far that they're not going to be open until at least the provincial order is over, which is May the 12th. So, and then they'll reassess then. So we could be the only one open. And if that's the case, how do we police that? When do we police that? Do we police it 24 hours a day? Who do we let in? Who do we not let in? What are we willing as a council to do for costs? Like, there's so many issues for it. As a fisherman, I hope it's open. I'd love to throw my dad's boat in the water and go out and spend some socially distanced time with a fishing rod and catch a walleye. I think it'd be a wonderful thing to do to gain my sanity. However, I think by doing it, by firing the bullet of opening it, there are a lot of other bullets that get fired, and we have to make all of the considerations and make sure that we have the plans for our staff fully considered, and what our plan will be, and stick to that plan 100%.
Anything else?
I think that's enough.
Councillor Hunter?
Well, there are a lot of different things to discuss, there's no doubt about that. As far as the boat launch docks not being ready, being that we have a business that works and fabricating all the time, I can well see where he's coming from. The last 3 weeks have been hell on earth trying to get metals and materials from all suppliers, and we deal with a half a dozen different ones, and every one of them's the same, so they're either shut down, or the ones supplying them shut down, or they can't get the trucks to truck material. It's just chaos. So we have our old docks, they can go in. I think our recreation director has a pretty good plan here. I think we definitely need the OPP there. And I think, as our deputy mayor said, we might be the only one within short breath and just has the dock open and open day. I'd like to see the OPP there, directing traffic, letting one or two trucks down at a time to unload and keeping it going. And if we are the only boat launch open, we're definitely gonna need the OPP there, because there's gonna be a backup on number 2 highway getting down in there. They're gonna need somebody controlling the traffic there that has the authority to ticket them if they don't pay attention to what they're being told. And they're not gonna listen to our staff being there telling them they can't come down, they're just gonna come down. But there's a uniform there and you're not obeying the rules, and you might get a $750 covert ticket handed to you. You might pay a little bit more attention to what they're telling you to do. As far as the charging, I don't know where we can't charge year round until we get some kind of a pay-as-you-go system set up down there, because there's no way you're gonna have somebody there collecting a $10 fee or something for lunch in a boat all year, until I think we should be charging, as Councillor Dilbaugh says, all year. And until we get something established there, I don't know how we're gonna do it. But opening day, when we're paying police officers to be there, I think every boat that comes down pays $10 coming down the hill to go down to launch for the opening day. And I think generally opening day is the busiest. Maybe we have to run Sunday too for the opening weekend after that. There's generally never any big rush down there of anybody there. It's a big rush opening day. The next weekend, it opens in the back end, and it's Nation and Reno and stuff where they're going to be going. That's not going to be our problem. So the next week it's up far north, so pressure's off out there. Then most of them are launches from private boats, or I've been down there during the summer there, maybe half a dozen boats sitting down there that's been launched. I don't think we really have to worry. Then that'll be after the date from the emergency order, whether it's extended or not. We can worry about that, but I think opening 2 days, we need the police there, and we need to charge to help cover the cost of the police. So.
I'm gonna go to Mr. Packwood first. Mark, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do have something to say.
Okay.
I think there's another issue. Number 4 is social distancing. How is that going to work out when you try getting a whole bunch of these people together? I know what it's like to be caged in, and I know everybody wants to get out of the water, but that's going to be almost impossible to control. So for me, I'd say no way, no enough.
Yeah, Mike, you wanted to get in?
Yes, through the chair. The reason I indicated on point 1 was averaging the 10 minutes per boat, that we would allow 12 boats down there per hour. That basically would potentially prevent the social distancing measures that should be in place. So there wouldn't be a large gathering. There would only be 2 people per boat that would go down. One person would take the boat out, and the other person would take the vehicle away. So the actual gathering of people down at the actual launch itself potentially could be averted by stopping them up at the top of the hill or at the bottom of the hill.
What if there's only one person?
Well, we would potentially have to put some sort of memo out to say that they would require 2 people in order to launch their boat, in order to be able to do this, so that the first 15 or 20 boats that go in, they'll be able to put their trailers and trucks down there, but there's obviously going to run out of space, and then that's when we would have to start looking at other locations to store the boats, and so hence you would need to have 2 individuals if was the desire of council.
Did you hear that, Mr. Packwood?
Not in a whole.
Okay.
So sort of give me a quick run over, please?
Okay, Mr. Spencer referred to the briefing note under items for consideration, where there's
Yes, I see that.
where there would be a 10-minute gap between putting a boat in and the next boat coming down. So that would take care of the social distancing to that point there. Normally, when they're on the river, they're not within 6 feet of another boat, in my estimation.
I understand that.
However, on opening day, it looks like a gauntlet. I don't know how many
Especially if you're the
fish
only
can
one
get
on
through on that. And I believe Mr. Shaw wants to get in with a comment here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one other consideration would be the environmental services folks getting down there. If there's lineups along the road and they can't get down to do their rounds because they're in twice a day, every day for rounds at the water treatment plant, so I'm not sure how we could address that, but it would be something we need to be considered.
You'd probably have to put some barriers up around the plant.
I'm just thinking just to get in, so like if the traffic's backed up for people waiting to get in, how they're gonna get down to the plant at all.
Right. Good point, thank you.
Other side of the road.
Yes. Mr. Mayor?
Well, I'm just interested in the discussion.
Okay, okay. I just have a couple of things. We didn't have the docks in last year, and opening day went without a hitch. Of course, we didn't have the COVID problem to worry about. And you're absolutely correct, folks, that other docks were open, or launch sites were open. I'm certainly not in favor of having our own staff there. However, here's, which I'm just putting out here. If we just remove the blocks and let people do as they did last year, putting their own boats in, is that going to be a severe problem? Go ahead, Mike.
Through the chair, the only problem potentially that I could see is the social gatherings, whether, you know what I mean? And then what are we as a township saying to the general public that we're trying to keep indoors and to keep social distancing? What are we saying if we know in fact that there are groups of people down there that are doing that? It's a catch-22, to be quite honest with you, you know?
It is.
It really is. I mean, you could look at it to try to reduce the number of people down there. You could potentially say that it would only be available to South Grenville residents.
But how are you gonna police that?
Well, you would have the OPP there that would have to show ID. So if someone's from Ottawa or someone's from Morrisburg.
Well, yeah, my original thought was not to have OPP at all, just leave it, just let it go.
That's, again, that's,
However, we're gonna have them parked all over the park. Yeah, so, anyway, well, we're having some good discussion here. Yes, Mr. Shaw?
Through the chair, I've been down at the water treatment plant many years on opening day, and just with the regular folks that come, it's very busy, and, constant traffic and parking everywhere. I think, the township possibly being the only open spot to launch your boat in the area, you're gonna have 3 or 4 times that number of people. And that will be so congested in there without any form of supervision or policing that I suspect it would, you could run the possibility of accidents and different things from inpatient people. Just something to be.
Yes, thank you. Also, I have another concern about stopping the traffic at the top of the hill. There's as the deputy mayor pointed out, we could have them lined up to Johnstown. And then on number 2 highway, that could be a somewhat serious situation. The other issue that I have is parking at the arena, the old arena area. on Dishaw Street. Somebody has to take their truck and, or car, vehicle and trailer all the way over there and then walk back is a considerable distance, which,
I would agree it is a distance, but the unforeseen question is how many people are going to be down there with their boats? Like on average, on the opening weekend, we have anywhere from 100 to 200 people that would launch their boat over the course of the weekend on a normal season. This is not a normal season.
correct.
You may have more individuals that have the opportunity to go on opening day, so there could be a greater number of people wanting to fish. So I was just trying, again, these are just all suggested things. I mean, council can choose them all or come up with new ones if they want. I'm not offended in any way. I was just trying to give you some information as to what we could do.
Thank you, Mike. It's sounding more and more and more like we shouldn't open it, in my opinion. Did you want back in, Mr.?
Yep, sure.
Mr. Mayor? Deputy Mayor, rather?
So the questions for me that remain, there's several. One is a big one that's been raised by, I think, staff, which is the promotion of conflicting information, which is, you know, we close our play structures, we close our ball diamonds, we've closed soccer areas, any place that you know, as a recreational resource. But we're considering opening one of them. So that, to me, there's a bit of a conflicting message, and how we're going to deal with that conflicting message. That's for me, that's a big issue. And then the next one is, if we recognize that there are going to be costs associated with this, I think it's safe to say that if the other townships around us aren't going to open until May the 12th, at the earliest, that this issue will go from May the 1st at midnight until the other boat launches are open, because people will continue to use ours. They're off work, people are off work in record numbers. They're looking for an outlet, and we're providing them with a possible outlet. So the numbers, to me, you can't compare to previous years. We know everybody wants to get out and get going, and they will. So how much are we willing to spend on policing this issue and making it safe for everyone and ensuring that everyone's safe? And you know, what is it? What is it? $5,000 to the OPP? Is it 10? Is it 20? What, like, where? How much are we going to pay for that added service that we're going to do? And
Can I just stop you there just for a moment? Have we had any estimates from the OPP regarding this?
No, not as of yet, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And so when are you going to have, you know, a barricade put up? What are the hours that you're going to have it put up? Or is it going to be up 24 hours a day? Is it going to be manned 24 hours a day for 12 days? Like, I think that there's a lot of consideration that needs to go into it. How much are we willing to spend is a big one for me. You know, we sit through budget and we worry about these numbers, and we worry about, you know, taxpayer dollars and so on and so forth. So, and the last point that I'll make in regards to the discussion that's ongoing is that it's an Edwardsburg Cardinal Municipal Boat Launch that's never, or at least to my recollection, we haven't charged people for the use of it. I have no problem charging outside user fees. They're quite common in arenas, they're quite common in many other ways, but I'm not a huge fan of charging our own residents to use their own municipal boat launch.
Anything else?
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you wanted in?
Okay, so I'm just gonna make a report here very briefly. And the first part of the report goes something like this. When we originally closed the boat launch ramp, we did so because we were at the point where we had been asked to close our outdoor recreational amenities, Regulation 104-20. And we were informed at that point that the boat launch ramps were a recreational amenity. Subsequent to that decision, on April the 8th, the Provincial Emergency Response Center answered a very specific question. And the very specific question was the following: are public boat launches that are not part of a marina required to be closed? The answer was, municipal boat launches that are not part of a marina are not required to be closed under the current emergency orders, period. However, municipalities may still choose to close boat launches. Ours is closed. The decision facing council is whether or not to open it. In pursuit of that decision, I took some time over the last few days, and specifically this morning at the county emergency control group meeting, to consult with a number of people. And so at the control group meeting this morning, I asked Dr. Stewart, the medical officer of health for the Lanark, Leeds and Grenville District Health Unit, what she thought about people getting out on the water. She said something to the effect that, I'm going to try to get as many of these words directly out of her mouth as I can. People should be thinking about getting out. They should be thinking about how to be getting some exercise. They should also be thinking about how to be keeping safe distancing. With respect to fishing, the problem will come at the boat launches, where it would be important to avoid groups of more than 5 people gathering. You would have to do the risk assessment, because on the one side, there would be the situation that if 2 gentlemen were in a boat, or 2 folks were in a boat, and one of them became ill, then that person and all of his contacts, and the other person that was with him or her, they and all of their contacts would have to go into social distancing. So I asked the question, well, is that not just a question of controlling the situation? And she said, yes, provided you can control the situation, that's how you would mitigate your risk. I took it from that to mean that the minimum that we would require would be the names, phone numbers, possibly the addresses of each of the folks that were involved in launching of boats. Now, aside from that report this morning, I made some initial inquiries at the political level, and the suggestion has been made that if council does make the decision, then the key thing would be if we could see it in our way to make it, to control the places where people were coming from, a minimum, the maximum being nobody outside of the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. The minimum, of course, would be residents of Edwardsburg Cardinal. So council, if they decide to open the docks, the launch, would make the decision as to what area of population we were going to serve, being aware of the fact that many of the problems with the COVID-19 virus are coming from farther to north of us, and I'm specifically thinking about Lanark County, the 3 homes there, and the city of Ottawa. So that's my report. I'm not making any recommendation at this time.
Go ahead, Mr. Spencer.
I will say, that is the one concern that I've had, and I've spoken to our CAO about that, is allowing people to come in from the larger areas. We don't know where they've been or who they've been in contact with, and that's what I'm concerned about from my staff's point of view. If we were to potentially go by the recommendation that the mayor just talked about getting everybody's address, phone number, and contact information, then that means the OPP aren't going to do that. So then that means that's my staff potentially that would have to do that. So my staff are gonna be interacting with all these individuals. And again, I don't know if we wanna put our staff in that position.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Just make a point here. The point is that it would not necessarily fall to the staff, because I'm quite sure that if we went to an organization like the Grenville Fish and Game Club, we would have enough volunteers to look after this and practically carry each boat to the water.
Do you have any, do you have any weight behind that, or is that just a suggestion?
Well, from the number of people that are approaching me asking if the boat launches are gonna be open, I'm quite confident that if we put out a call for volunteers, we'd get lots of response.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay, so further to the mayor's comments, with limiting access to a Cardinal boat launch to just members of Leeds Grenville, living about 3 minutes from the boat launch myself and about 5 houses from the township line, it's hard to imagine that we would tell residents that live less than 5 to 7 minutes out of the way to places like Iroquois, whose grocery store helps out our food bank, that they cannot use our boat launch as part of this order. I would struggle with that. They show support for our community, we should show support to theirs. As far as the Dr. Stewart portion of those notes, you know clearly we're reading the quote off of your notes. I know Rebecca probably didn't have enough time to write that entire conversation down, but I think those are important notes as far as this conversation goes, and maybe we can provide that Dr. Stewart's words for the minutes, so that this discussion, when it's reviewed in the minutes, that they'll reflect the accurate answers that Dr. Stewart provided to your questions.
Mr. Chairman, I make it clear, I didn't make any recommendation here.
I understand. That was not a recommendation.
Well, it was clearly a quote though from Dr.
Yeah.
Stewart and what Dr. Stewart had replied to you on your questions. And it's on the video as part of the record,
Yeah.
so if it's going to be used to make a decision, I think it should be part of the actual written record as well.
Thank you. Counselor?
Mr. Chair, I did a little planning over the weekend on how to do it. I think we could, I agree with the mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't make any recommendations,
I
Mr.
know.
Chair.
I know. Go ahead.
Thank you. Anyways, some of the stuff I put together, I think it can be done very easily. I really do. We just need some people. I mean, our 6 feet distancing can work. I looked at it, you need about 6 people, 2 at the Legion Way there before you go to Causeway, 2 down at the boat launch, and 2 over to the Cardinal Arena, and that's just for an override if you get flooded out. So once you get the boats down there and it's plugged up to the Legion Way, you tell the people to turn around, go to the rink and wait, and then we 2-way radio or whatever. It's a very simple solution. For the charging, I mean, I don't know why we just can't, we got 10 days, why can't we get an app made up on our website, get it out on social media, that we are charging $10 per boat, anybody outside the township, $75 for the season, a $5 one-time shot for members of Eversburg Cardinal. register their trailer, just their trailer. We gotta keep that in mind, that's all we're interested in, is their trailer. Name, registration of address, phone number and email, registration of the plate number, that's all you need. And they can pay by e-transfer, by MasterCard, Visa, or whatever, so that's the simple part. And the teams that get organized, I think if we did if you just did a little, get it prepared, get ready, do a little mock, I think it worked very, very well. I think we should open it up. She sent it out August or April 17th. If you wanna go fishing, make sure it's in a public area and make sure you're 6 feet apart. So she's even set that in on the 17th of April. And the phone calls I've been getting, I hate to say no, we're not going to open it for our members of the township. So I think we should really look at it, I think we should get our heads together, and I think we should go forward.
When you're talking about getting volunteers and things like this, are you suggesting that staff do that, or are you suggesting that?
Staff, if
Done
staff's
another
scared,
way.
I think we can get enough volunteers, and if we can use staff, I'd be more than happy to.
I don't think we should use staff myself.
Well, that's.
I really don't.
But I mean, it's so easy. I really do believe it's easy if we start getting things in order.
Deputy Mayor, you want back in?
Sure, I'm happy to help in any way. I'd volunteer in a second. So, to whatever possibly.
There's two, we need four.
So, however, I do think that we need to have all of the questions answered before we make a decision. And you know, we're talking user fees, and I mean, my understanding when it comes to user fees for our own recreation, you know, stuff would be that, would we not have a bylaw that would cover recreational user fees? And would we not have to amend that bylaw before we could actually start charging people fees for our boat?
Do we have a bylaw?
We do, and it does not address any of that at this point.
So we'd have to amend the bylaw
We would.
to do that. Well, okay. That's another.
Are we gonna amend it next week? Next Monday?
Another-
But I mean, those are things
another
to me
nail.
that we have to make sure, from a procedural standpoint, if we're gonna do all of the things that we wanna do. Don't get me wrong, I want the boat launch open, but I want it open safely, and I wanna take into consideration the issue that we're gonna have, because it's gonna be bigger than I think people think. And I'd rather overestimate the issue than underestimate it and be flooded out and not have the resources and put people like you and I and the good people from the Grenville Fishing Game Club at risk because we weren't prepared.
But we will be prepared.
And believe me, I want it too.
We will be
Don't hear me
prepared.
wrong, but I think we really, like, when we do this, it's gonna be a big deal.
However, your previous comment, which I hadn't thought of, and I take very seriously your previous comment about the other neighboring municipalities who help us out drastically. I just don't see how we can limit it to just our own. Either we're gonna have to open it up to everybody and open it up. And I hope there's a way that we can open it up. But as I've said before, I don't want our staff exposed to this. Okay?
So,
We've already got people off, 3 people off already. We don't need to take the chance to get any more people off. I'd like to know what the OPP are going to charge us. I'd like to know how many volunteers we can get, and who's going to, the other question I have is, who's going to be in charge of these volunteers? Because you just can't have them
That's
running
fine.
around willy-nilly. So, and as far as charging goes, I just don't think we should charge. We're not equipped to handle a charge at this moment. As Councillor Hunter alluded to earlier, is if we get set up with a system to be able to handle charging, okay, that,
System would be an app, Mr. Chair.
well,
Very simple, an app.
okay, well, I'm not as electronically competent, I guess is the word to, so that's why.
So
You
next
want back
next question for me is let's say that I live in Stittsville, and I hear the Cardinal boat launch is open, and I throw my boat, I hook my trailer on, and I start driving to Edwardsburg Cardinal because the boat launch is open. I've seen it on Facebook or social media, how wonderful it is, they want us to get out and be sane and fish. Do we create implications for residents from outside a certain radiuses under the Emergency Act? Would it be okay for a fisherman in Stittsville to hook their boat to a trailer to come out and drive for a recreational activity that's 50, 20, 100 kilometers away? Are we creating an issue that we're unsure of by encouraging them to come do that?
Well, one way to get around that is if you're not a member of the immediate community, I guess we could have a different pay scale or a different pay rate if you're going to charge. In other words, somebody from as far away as Stittsville we might charge $25.
I don't think, that's not the point you're talking about.
No, mine is,
No,
creating an
it's-
issue under the Emergency
Right.
Act. And like, what happens when somebody from Kingston hears they're open and wants to drop their boat in? And, you know, they've got a riverfront property in, you know, wherever, and they wanna just
Yeah.
put their boat to their dock, not actually go fishing. I mean, the questions to this are, you know, are endless. I think our heart is in absolutely the right place, and we wanna do what's best for our fishermen and get them out and get them fishing, but, man, we could create a ton of issues for a lot of people.
And you're also gonna have to take into consideration the timing of having those boats come down to the dock, because if the dock is open, there's nothing to stop somebody at 3 o'clock on Friday coming down and putting their boat in the water and sitting out in the river.
Sure, but the other thing too that we haven't considered, we've considered launching boats, but we haven't considered bringing boats back in.
That's
And-
correct.
And so as much as boats have to go out, when they go out, they're not staying out, they have to get back in the trailers and they have to come back
That
in
is
as well.
correct.
And that creates an issue within the timetable and for all of, you
And
know,
what
the
are we going
discussion.
to do with the boats where they do come back in, the guy jumps out of the boat and goes up and gets the car, what's the boat gonna do? Tie up at the dock? That means we gotta police something there has to happen. So, because you know, we probably could have 3 or 4 boats tied up, waiting. And what's that going to do with people on the waterfront, on that canal, from the Causeway Bridge to the east, right down? What's that going to do with 40 or 50 boats running around in that area? Are they going to be upset with the amount of weight that comes off the boats on their property, or?
Well, they've had that for how many years?
There's so many
Well,
issues.
yeah, but it's never been held up like that before,
The,
you know?
is, like I noticed yesterday when we were driving yesterday, just past the house, and there were some fishermen fishing in the canal, and just as we got there, the white conservation MNR truck, enforcement truck pulled up. So obviously they're out doing a little bit of policing. Is there any way of having them involved in this to help us with some of this? Like, or is the MNR gonna look at us and go, hey,
I think-
you're circus, you're monkeys?
Oh.
Like, is that the?
They're gonna be sitting out in the water, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, they'll be sitting out there
Yeah.
then.
They'll be looking after the boats out there, what they're catching and who's fishing.
Better bring it up.
There's one other thing that I forgot, and I have mentioned it in other discussions with other people, but the Americans have a much different set of rules and regulations in place right now than we do. They're not necessarily governed by the same laws and governed by the same restrictions that we find ourselves under right now, especially, you know, directly to the south. They're going to be out opening day as well. I know they're not allowed to fish in Canadian waters, but they can get Canadian fishing licenses
They
so
can
that
come
they
over,
can.
yeah.
I mean, the amount of issues of them potentially stopping, I know the border's closed, but potentially, you know, the amount of issues that we could face on that opening weekend are enormous, and I don't wanna create new ones as well for, you know, for the people who enforce our laws and are trying to keep all of us safe as well. It's complex.
It is, very, yeah, and the more we discuss it, the more complex it seems to get, so.
The boat launches in New York State are open now, they were opened on
They're open
Friday.
now, eh?
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Mike.
So they're gonna be here fishing.
Does anyone know, is Morrisburg open?
They are not.
They are not. And is
Right
there
down-
any, what about Iroquois?
Not Iroquois, right down to Cornwall.
Because
Nothing.
Iroquois, a lot of that area there has private boathouses. Wonder what they're doing.
I think they still, sorry, I mean, through the chair, they still have the municipal launch,
Yes,
the marina, so the boat houses, they may, if their boats are in there, they can probably get out. But
Yes.
actually load them and get into their boat houses, they'd have to go through the marina, which I believe is closed.
if they have to load, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Right. So it is, Iroquois is definitely closed.
Marinas are closed.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Yeah, the question is not, what are they doing? The question is, what are they going to be doing on May the 1st?
Correct.
that is correct, yes.
If I may, the CIO reached out to a couple of the neighboring municipalities, and I know North Wemble is remaining closed at the current time. North Augusta has one open, which I believe is right in Maitland, right beside the old windmill there.
Yes, yes.
So Augusta does have one
That's,
open, I never talked to them.
yeah,
They do,
yeah.
okay.
At least that was the
Advertise that.
confirmation that Dave received back from
privately owned.
Augusta.
Sold privately.
It could be privately owned.
Yeah, it is, that's privately owned.
But, and Westport is remaining closed as well, so.
Well, Mr. Packwood, you've sat there very patiently.
I'm listening to everything.
Anything further to comment?
There's so many things that can go wrong. To me, I'd wait until the social distancing is over. That's just an opinion.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have no recommendation with this. We have discussed it, but we are going to have to make a decision fairly soon as to whether or not the, pardon?
Let's get there.
Today.
Let's keep going.
Well, that's what I'm looking for a nodding of the heads around the table. First of all, we have to decide whether or not we're gonna open the darn thing in the first place, because if we don't open it, we don't have to take any actions. And if we do open it, we do have to start taking actions. We have to get volunteers together, we have to get systems ready and things like that. Do we really feel around the table, including yourself, Mr. Packwood, that are we ready to open this boat dock? Deputy Mayor,
I am, 100%.
you are.
Yep.
Counselor Hunter, why don't we just poll here?
Well, I'd like to see it open, but great to have volunteers down there and stuff, but I think we're gonna, if we don't have somebody with authority there other than volunteers, I know it's gonna cost us money to have the police there, but on the opening day, I think regardless of what it costs us, we gotta have some police there, so. We can have volunteers helping them launch and picking them up, they got lots of game and fish to do stuff like that, but you're gonna get people that come, maybe not within our territory, that comes that aren't gonna wanna listen to what volunteers tell them, so.
We always can call
Especially lined
911.
up at midnight on.
Mr. Mayor, your feelings?
12:01, the first boat will be going in the water.
10 o'clock they'll be lined up.
Oh, yeah, they'll be ready to go.
10 PM
It'll
Friday.
be 1 second, it'll be 1 second past midnight.
That's when their lines will be in the water.
Yeah,
10 o'clock.
Don't look at me.
well, I'm just, so you don't wanna get in on the poll here.
I'm on the fence.
You're on the fence. Counselor Dillabaugh,
No, you know how I feel.
you wanna open it. And I wanna open it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 that wanna see it opened, as far as
Who's the fourth one?
me,
I got Dillabaugh, Cameron.
Dillabaugh, Cameron,
Hunter to
Hunter and
I say yes
Bishops.
for sure.
And you're on the fence.
You gonna fall off the fence?
So,
I,
we've made the decision that it's going to, we'd like to see it open, and now we just have to put everything else into place.
can I? Further a bit?
Sure.
So it seems like that you're forming a good consensus, and I think that that's great. Now that we're forming that consensus, out of this continued discussion, or this discussion we have going, is there any way that we can take, you know, the thing that we've discussed and share it with our neighbors as soon as possible, so that maybe they'll consider opening theirs, so it'll alleviate some of the issues that we may potentially have that day. If they're still stuck on May the 12th, then they're still stuck on May the 12th. But if we can, you know, share what this discussion has brought out and encourage them to help us by opening theirs as a result of this discussion a little bit earlier to help their citizens and help us alleviate this issue, you know, it could be potentially helpful that day for us and for all of their residents as well.
The chair appreciates your comments, and I will just add to that, that if we do notify them, it's gonna have to be done almost immediately, because I'm quite sure their council will go through the same situation that we did just here, as have a discussion along the lines of whether they should or shouldn't open it. So they're gonna have to have some time. But for the time being, that it's a consensus that we would like to see the boat ramp open, and because we have no recommendation, we don't have to vote on it, but,
I just make a couple comments.
Excuse me.
One, I think it'd be nice to ask our neighbors, but I don't know our neighbors, how many of them actually have a boat ramp that isn't connected with a marina. And they can't open it if it's connected with a marina, so
There
that's
is
quite
one in
clear.
Prescott.
So there's not very many of them that could open.
So done
Another
that.
point I'd like to make
South
is we're worrying about the crowd. And I know Councillor Delva and our deputy mayor both fish. And they're talking to people. The last thing I would do is put this on our Facebook or any of our advertisement that this dock is open.
It's gonna happen the first boat that goes out.
Just let the people find out. And if we advertise it, the far away ones are gonna know. I say just keep it off of Facebook, keep it off everything. The local ones will find out that it's open, they'll show up. I don't think we should be putting it on. We're just enticing people from Ottawa and Norfolk, Kemptville, and every place else to come.
100%.
They're gonna roll, though, you know
But
that.
as soon as the first boat goes out in the water,
Soon
and
as
they catch a nice big walleye, the picture goes on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that, but I just say, I don't think we should
We
be
should be, yeah,
publicizing
no, I-
it ourselves.
100%.
We gets on Facebook and stuff, and it gets out, and some come, that's gonna happen, but I don't think we should be making any big statement that we're opening it.
No, I agree with that one.
Mr. Chair, what do you, I'd like to ask, Mr. Spencer, does he feel like he can have some staff on board, or does he feel uncomfortable, or?
So through the chair, I think staff is awaiting council direction, committee direction on, all that we have right now is there's a consensus to open the boat launch.
Yep.
But I think through the discussion, there was about 20 different methods and processes that were raised.
yeah, and this is what staff is gonna, I guess, this is what staff is gonna have to sort out, is to, how about it? I mean, we have, sitting around this table, if we have ideas for such as volunteers and things like that, or any other, I think you should consult with staff as quickly as possible to get that undertaking in place.
Excuse me.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chair, the CEO says the staff is looking for direction. I don't think they are. I've got a briefing note in front of me that says that having duty paid OPP officers on site or a security guard system so that my frontline workers are not harassed. So, and from what I've heard in the discussion, the staff is really not all that eager to do this.
Well, that comment refers to the line about having OPP officers there. And it tells me that they are concerned of our staff confronting any individuals.
So, you know, I mean, there's financial implications here.
Yes, there is. And that's something that we have to, that all has to be brought to the forefront. And we've only got 2 weeks to do it.
10 days.
Yes, correction, yes. 10 days.
I think if staff is required, if we figure we do need one staff member or something around, or 2 staff members down there to help with it, I think this should be a request Mike makes to his staff, and it should be totally volunteer. If they're willing to do it and be paid for their all right, but it shouldn't be a thing that we schedule them to do it. If it's something that they feel comfortable in doing, that they want to pick up some overtime for being down there working, that's,
When I mentioned staff, what I was referring to is our internal staff here at the office, not staff down at the boat ramp on the day of. When I said staff has, all I'm saying is staff has to sort these problems that we've given to make sure we can have these issues in place the day that the boat ramp is open. Deputy Mayor?
So, you know, continuing on with what the CAO was saying and what Councilor Miller said, is that what I'm hearing is well, yeah, okay, we accept that it's going to have a cost associated with it. As a council, how much are we willing, you know, we wouldn't approve something in a budget, we beat up our budget through 6 meetings. We wouldn't approve something in that budget without actually seeing a fully costed, itemized list for it. If this is going to have an unknown cost to it, I want to see what.
Oh, no, we can't go, I wouldn't support going blind into saying, okay, Mr. OPP, charge us whatever you want.
Overtime on a Friday?
I'm quite sure that they can give us some idea of what it's going to cost. But
We have 10 days to get that. That's
we've got
my,
10 days
that's
to get
my.
it, and all the other issues.
So back to the CAO who's looking for clear direction. What do you need?
Well, through the chair, there was discussion with respect to the use of strictly volunteers, you know, with the potential of the Fish and Game Club. There was a combination with the use of volunteers and potentially having OPP on site. There was discussion on OPP on site with some supplement, with staff supplementing. There were a number of directions, and with, I guess, kind of need to have an idea of what sort of channel you would like to be looked at. You know, is there a point where if we get pricing from OPP that it's a no-go?
Go ahead.
So if I may, through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So if I can offer a suggestion and see what council thinks, is that the mayor's indicated that we would have enough people from the Grenville Fishing Game Club to carry boats to the water. So why don't we use?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I said I had the impression.
Sure, the impression, and I think you're right. I don't think you're wrong. That's the case. So if we can reach out to some of those groups ourselves or whatever to arrange some volunteers, that would be my first. You know, that would be my first want with a combination of those volunteers and staff. And if things got out of hand, obviously the OPP is always there if things get out of control, and they're just a phone call away. So if I could avoid OPP being involved at that cost initially, then then so be it. You know, I would much rather go with what, you know, the mayor has suggested, which is a group of volunteers and mixed in if staff are willing, mixed in, and I think, you know, two of us have indicated that we'd be willing to help out to some degree as well.
Okay,
Through the chair,
Counselor?
this is maybe for Rebecca, is it, what's the chances of getting an app made up?
App?
Want me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike's.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Dillabaugh, yeah, it would be impossible.
Pardon?
It would be impossible,
Impossible?
to have it ready to go in 2 weeks' time, without a doubt. It's not something that takes time to incorporate that in that. And, I mean, we certainly have no one on our township staff that would even be capable of taking that on. We would have to go to a third-party company, individual, to do that. But it's certainly not something that would be done in the course of 10 days.
Is there a local, so if we got somebody, a third party, they couldn't do it in 10 days?
I would say no, and if you did, there still would be a cost to it.
Well, I realize that, yeah.
Yeah. I think you would be, yeah, I think you could probably look at finding other ways, or not charging at all. And that's something that would not be viable to have ready in 2 weeks' time, Steve.
And we also have to change the bylaw to allow charging.
We'll only do that next Monday.
That's true.
So I guess there's another item, right? You know, is the committee directing staff to bring forward an amendment to a bylaw to charge at the boat docks for one weekend, indefinitely? And how would,
my personal opinion is, I really don't wanna see charging at the boat ramp. I could be, if we had a secure, safe system, somewhere out there, I may look at it. But there's very few free boat launches between Brockville and Cornwall that I know of.
So, I'm on a roll today.
You are.
I apologize. I'm all for a user fee for a boat launch, full-time, like forever, for anybody outside of our township. I have no issue with that. We pay a lot of money to, and we're talking about making a lot of renovations to that waterfront, and generating some revenue is a wonderful thing. However, while COVID is on and everybody else's boat launches caused by COVID, if we put an inflated charge
Yeah.
for non-residents on ours, is that no different than a medical supply company inflating the cost of their masks?
Good point,
and
good
PPE?
point.
So,
I'm gonna do year round, we're not doing it all.
yes.
Well,
Counselor?
I don't buy that you should have a free boat launch.
No.
Every other recreation facility you pay for, if you use a ball diamond, you rent it for the year and you pay so much for it. So I don't see
I
that
understand.
boat launches are any different than any other recreation. I agree with Councilor Dillabaugh, it needs to be a flat rate. I think if anybody's launched boats up at Rideau Ferry, they have a very good system. It's just a pay-as-you machine sitting there, you stick a $10 bill in it, and it kicks you out a ticket to stick on your windshield of your truck that you had the boat launch on, that you paid for launching your boat. There's no supervision, it's a honor system. Recreation guys drive through maybe every second day or something, they come through or something. Walk around, see who's got the tickets on their boats, and everybody's got a ticket, that's fine. If they haven't got a ticket, they get a nice little red ticket that costs them $50 stuck under the windshield for not paying the fee, so they don't very seldom ever get. I asked a recreation guy one day, because he was walking around, I asked him, what do you do? He said, well, I'm just checking to see if everybody's got a ticket for being in there, I said, how many of those red tickets do you give out? He said, well, I said, I think maybe I gave out 10 last year.
For the whole year.
Yeah, everybody's honest.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
$10 to it. They got a beautiful dock system.
But we'll never get,
Back in.
we'll never get that
Just-
machine in by next Monday.
Right,
John.
and that's what I was, that's what I was
I like
thinking
that,
is
I
it's,
saw, Huckberry's got a beautiful system.
I think, I think,
$150.
it's a lot to get done in 10 days.
I think the CIO wants in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It certainly sounds like there's some great ideas and there's some consensus with respect to charging. But I don't think but it appears to me the consensus on charging is as an ongoing item,
Yeah,
not a single related situation.
No.
So I think with respect to the May 2nd opening, you know,
Let's forget about it.
let's forget about charging.
Thank you.
And then, you know, later on in the year, we can certainly provide a more fulsome report for something that would be, you know, moving forward.
Correct. Okay, with all the discussion we've had, then what else have you got as far as outstanding, as far as your capacity is concerned here? I'm quite sure someone on staff can talk to the OPP about costing. I'm quite sure that staff could talk to Grenville Fish and Game Club regarding volunteers, and Mr. Counselor Dillaboy, if you have people that you know of that could volunteer, or
How
deputy
many do you
mayor.
want, sir?
Well, that would be,
well, after shift work, so. nobody-
I would say 6 and 6 is 12, you need 6 and 6
Yeah,
so,
for 2 shifts if you wanna go 2 shifts.
yeah.
as far as the OPP are concerned, I think it would be wise, and I don't know what the rest of the table feels, I think it would be wise to make sure there is either a cruiser in the area at all times throughout the 2-day weekend, Saturday and Sunday, just in case they're needed. Whether they can do that, I don't know.
Can you buy them a hot
I
dog
don't-
or hamburger?
Sure.
I would,
Right.
like, I'm not okay, like, for me, I'm not okay with that one without knowing what that exact cost is
Well, that's
before,
correct.
before asking.
Yes, no.
Before asking
We
for
we
it.
need costs, there's no question we need costs.
I'd like to stay away from it if we could,
Me too.
and just have 911 available.
Well, whatever, as long as we talk to the superintendent, make sure that they've got people on duty.
To explain what we're doing,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Mr. CIO, what else is on your list that you are concerned about?
So just from a clarity standpoint with respect to the volunteers, it's just volunteers, no coverage, like with respect to WSIB or anything like that.
Do we normally supply WSIB for volunteers?
This would be what I would consider not a normal,
Correct.
that, I just,
Correct. Anything else?
If I may just chime in, you would have to make sure that the volunteers have the proper PPEs on, to make sure that they're visible.
Such as a mask or,
Could be,
Or
well,
gloves.
I'm not suggesting, well, I'm talking about, if they're working in the dark, they'll have to have,
Identification, reflective jackets.
reflective identification,
Got a couple of those vests.
vests and what have you.
Is there any way, to the CEO, to the chair, CEO, is there any way we can get a hold of some 2-way radios? Well,
no, through the chair, I certainly appreciate it, but each step in this gets,
complicated,
well, it actually
complicated.
creates more and more demand
yes.
of time and setup and logistics. So I guess I just wanna make sure that committee is prepared to, you know, for that time to be directed in this app.
could I help you to move on with that through the daytime of organizing some of this stuff? Do we have to have our staff with their head down in this? Maybe give us a little direction. I don't think, the deputy mayor has a lot to do in the next couple of days. Can you, maybe, can we help,
Parenting.
though, you know, get that organized with two-way radios or whatever, maybe do a little mock. That's all I'm concerned. I think if we get if we get the volunteers, the 12 volunteers, I realize what you're saying. You tell us what we need then. How's that? I think that's the best. You tell us. Can we get two-way? Okay, I'll tell you. Can we have two-way radios? Do we need 12 people, you think? 2 shifts, 6, 2, 4, 6? I want to get, sorry, but I just, one other thing, I want to get that little trailer from the Johnstown, or from the port. If we have to leave the boat and the cars and trailers up at the arena, if we get plugged that much, I mean, I figured out yesterday down there, we can put 100 trailers down there and boats. So if we go beyond that, can we transport those guys down?
How are you gonna do safe distancing?
6 feet on a trailer, how many can we get on that trailer?
They're not 6 feet apart, Steve.
That was just a thought, thank you.
The seats are too close.
Yeah, okay.
No, you could have probably, you could have 2, 4, 6.
I know what you're saying, Dave. It
4,
keeps
6,
getting more
10. You
complicated,
could
more
have 10.
complicated. And it is.
Well, and
You're trying though. It's a great idea and you're trying hard. It's just, it's very complicated and a really
It is.
hard time.
Yeah, it is for
And
sure.
I
I
really
understand your
think-
frustration. I completely
I
get
don't-
it.
I think you're gonna get 100 boats and trailers down there.
There?
You're gonna have to have your distances between your boats and trailers, keep your 6-foot distance, or you're only gonna be able to park, or you park 3, you're gonna park 2, because they're gonna have to keep at least 6 feet apart.
40 in the parking lot, 30
No, it's only the
40 at the
people,
park, 30 at,
yeah, it's only the people that have to be separated, not the cars.
How are the people getting in and out of the cars?
Well, yeah, and
we got one guy in the boat already waiting.
you know, that's the other thing. If 2 cars pull into the parking spots at the same time, one's gonna have to realize he's gotta be 6 feet away from the other person.
Boy, this is a long one on this.
Yeah.
Should have waited down to the last one.
I tell you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
might I suggest that potentially myself and maybe our CAO, if he's available, set up a meeting for tomorrow, Wednesday, with Councillor Dillabaugh and Deputy Mayor Deschamps to potentially kind of stream through some of these issues to alleviate having to take more time up here in the council meeting?
I think you're absolutely correct.
So my last item is upset dollar limit,
What was that?
Meaning what?
an upset dollar value.
Like for what?
There's going to be some costs. Right?
Can we get an estimate of those costs before we have to decide on a number?
Certainly.
Perhaps at the meeting tomorrow or the next day, but whatever.
Only council can approve an allotment of money.
Staff's gonna have to supply barriers and stuff's gonna have to be moved down and set there someplace, even with the volunteers, staff's gonna have to take the time to get barriers and stuff set down there that some volunteers can set out in place and stuff to block off the roads and stuff. Few costs.
Okay, I really don't wanna belabor all this before the 4 of you have a chance to meet tomorrow to finalize some more, but Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
If cost is an issue, and it will be for sure, as we go through that tomorrow and a
Wednesday.
number, or when, whatever day, as we go through that and a number becomes, you know, more clear, or at least an upper level of a number, a potential level number becomes clear. I know we're always careful when we send our emails out that you know, we don't have discussions via email, but are we allowed to have an email?
Absolutely not.
We're not allowed to have an email meeting,
So-
right?
so-
Unless it's declared as a meeting.
No, so through the chair, the place would be at the council meeting next Monday to have some type of action item with a recommendation. I'm just trying to to get a sense of what,
Yeah, yeah,
what,
yeah.
what's,
Yeah,
what,
'cause
what,
otherwise
what
it'd be
the, what the
special.
desire is, so that we can try to channel that, so we'll,
Maybe after Wednesday we can't do it.
Who knows?
Okay.
We'll try.
fair enough, I think, through the chair, I think I have
I don't
enough
believe that.
to get started.
Okay, thank you, Mike, that's a great idea, thank you for that. So, we can get away from this topic now. I just want to make one further comment as far as the volunteers go to Councillor Dillabon and Deputy Mayor Deschamps. That unfortunately, I cannot take the chance of volunteering with my wife's COPD condition. I cannot take any chances of bringing anything back to the house. Unfortunately, I won't be able to help you volunteer. Okay, let's move on.
Forgot
We're
where
now-
we were.
We're now at 7D, and, yes, we're at 7D, pages 80 to 81 on your hard copies, and it is the dust suppression tender. And I believe Mr. Shaw, there is a recommendation with that, and I believe Mr. Shaw could highlight some of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this action item is to award successful bidder of the dust suppressant tender. The tender was issued by invitation on March 3rd, 2020, to companies for the supply of approximately 210,000 liters of liquid dust suppressant based on past quantities. Tenders were opened public in March 17th. Financial considerations, the unit price submitted by Daily Limited increased by 1 cent per liter from 2019 pricing, or about 4%. However, the pricing is in line with the 2020 budget submission of $55,000. Recommendation that committee recommends that council approve and award the supply of dust suppressant tender to Dan Kim Surface Solution of Division of Daily at a unit price of 0.2595 cents per liter, with a maximum of $55,000, including non-rebated HST.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Any comments, any questions, concerns regarding this briefing note? I just have, I know one question, and that is, in your first paragraph on the background, it says in conjunction with granular, and it's just the last, that is applied to mitigate and control dust on gravel roads. But I understand that they are going to do the actual applying this to the roads as well. Is that in the contract?
Yes.
Okay. It's to, oh yes, I see it here, to deliver and apply
Yeah.
to the roads, and we're gonna tell them which roads to do.
Correct.
Good. Okay, could I have a mover, please? Councillor Hunter, could I have a seconder? Looking for a seconder? Deputy Mayor seconding, I'll call the question. All in favor of the recommendation?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Thank you.
The table for the next two.
How come that was so easy?
Okay, that was, wasn't it? The next one is the 7E, which is the crushed rock tender. And for this and the next one, Councillor Hunter has declared a conflict of interest. And Mr. Shaw, are you going to highlight this?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this action item is to award the supply of crushed rock tender to Tackaberry and Sons Construction Company Limited. The tender was issued March 3rd, 2020 to local companies and placed on the website for a supply of approximately 7,500 metric tons of crushed rock for gravel road resurfacing and reshaping. Township received 3 submissions by the March 17th, 2020 closing date. The tenders were open, and the winning tender was from Tackaberry's for a total of $92,850. This unit price is 40 cents a ton higher than 2019, about a little over 3% increase, and $4,484.16 higher than the proposed budget. Therefore, Public Works Department will reduce the tonnage to meet the budget. Recommendation that committee recommends that council award the supply crush rock tender to G. Tackleberry and Sons Construction Company Limited at the unit price of $12.38 per metric ton to a maximum of $90,000, including non-rebated HST.
Okay, questions or concerns, anyone? Mr. Mayor, go
So
ahead.
did I hear it's up 40 cents per metric ton
Correct.
to the winning contractor?
Correct.
And so the other ones must be up commensurately with that, are they?
They're higher. If you look on the cover page there, there's a chart. Basically, the Tackleberry's in at $12.38, Coco Paving at $12.90 and $13.50, so.
So the $12.90 from Coco Paving, what was theirs last year? Not that it matters at this point.
I'm not sure off the top of my head what it would be, but it would be, if the $12.38 was 40 cents higher, then that would make it $11.98.
Yeah, but we don't know that.
So proportionally, the $12.90 would be almost $1 more.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I just wondered if we had comparative numbers. That's fine.
And once again, the bidder, the successful bidder will supply, haul, and spread rock onto the specified roads through the township. Thank you. Okay, did I get a mover and seconder for this? I don't think I did. Can I get a mover, please? Councilor Dillabaugh, can I get a seconder? Looking for a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Okay, you've read the recommendation and heard the recommendation. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried.
Aye.
Thank you.
Deputy.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Chair, I believe that.
I did have my hand up.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry.
For a question,
Yes.
my question was that, are there or would there be potential implications in the reduction of, we're gonna be using less of the product?
I think due
Is it
to,
gonna achieve our goal, or are we going to be short 4% of the goal?
through the chair, I believe we can attain our goal still with it. The numbers were up last year because last year there was a bit of a shortfall on some of the projects, so they were up slightly to accommodate for that.
So it still leaves us with enough product. Question.
How much is enough?
Anyway, yay.
Yeah,
How much is enough?
and you're, so that carries the motion. Thank you. We'll now move to 7F, which also has a recommendation. It is to award the tender for hot mix resurfacing. And the briefing note has been given to you. And Mr. Shaw, are you going to highlight some issues here for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this is to award the contract to the successful bidder of the hot mix resurfacing tender. Tender ECPW 2006 was issued March 23rd. 3 bids were received by the closing date. And the lowest bid was received from Coco Group Limited. That's $704,112.61. With 5 locations under the tender. There was Ventnor Road, Safford Road, Blair Road, Hudson Crescent, and Judy Place. Financial considerations, the combined 2020 budget for these road projects was $476,500. These projects were mainly funded by federal gas tax and OCIF in the amount of $439,000, leaving only $38,500 taxation-supported funding required. However, the tendered price is $157,575.21 over budget. After experienced a deficit in the Pittston Road project material costs last year's quantities of base repair materials were increased in this year's budget. This year, the component unit prices were quoted higher than anticipated, driving up the overall price of the project. In addition, a large portion of the increases can be attributed to the carbon tax applied July 1st and again in April 1st, 2020, which were not captured in estimates for this project. There's two options, which is completing the full contract, which would leave a deficit of $157,575.21 to make up the difference. Or option B, in a reduced scope in which Judy Place and Hudson Crescent would be postponed until next year. And the bottom line cost would be a surplus of $261.67. The recommendation, that committee recommend that council award the hot mix resurfacing tender to Coco Paving Limited for a reduced scope of work, option B, at a cost of $476,500, including non-rebated HST, and 2, authorize the Director of Operations to execute the contract documents.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or concerns?
I'm quite concerned about the over budgeting,
Yes.
not the over budgeting, the amount that the contract is over, the tender is over budget. I mean, that's quite a discrepancy, really. And I'm a little bit reluctant to take out Hudson Crescent and Judy Place.
I have a question about Safford Road. Safford Road is from what I understand, is one of the roads that is shared between two municipalities. On one side is our neighbors to the east, and on the other side, it's ours. And I understand that which I believe may have been changed, but I understand that we do the servicing or we look after this road, and they look after another road.
Marine Station.
But I believe that's no longer the case, is that
No,
correct?
No, that is the case.
It still is the case? And
And they did surface treating on Marine Station Road, if I recall correctly.
and did we share the cost?
No.
No. So,
But this Safford Road portion is just a small portion from Browsville to Haddo, from Browsville Road to Haddo Road. It's not
Yes,
the section
yes.
that goes from, it's not the section that goes from Browsville Road over the top of the hill down to
so it's less than half a
Kane.
kilometer.
Kane. Yeah.
Yeah. It's only the north part from Roseville North, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, it's fairly short. So option B is to remove Hudson and Judy Place, is that correct?
Correct.
And what is the distance, of the Judy Place and Hudson Crescent? And all I'm wondering about here, Mr. Shaw, is the fact that is Judy Place and Hudson Crescent larger than Safford Road or smaller? And I guess my other question would be, is it more important to do Safford Road than the other two?
I think Safford Road was put off once.
Yes.
Jim, maybe you can answer that one.
Mr. Chair, the answer to your question is that Safford Road is slightly more than the Judy Place
Okay,
and Hudson.
yes,
The putting off, if you look at the rating of roads and the traffic volumes,
yes,
this section of Safford takes a lot more traffic than a Judy Place or a Hudson, which means we can, that's why the recommendation was worked out that way, is to take off lower traffic road, which doesn't have as much of a chance to fail, or like, we're putting a lot of coal patch on Safford right now, and that's really expensive way of doing business.
Good.
All your questions?
yes, it does, thank you. Mr. Councilor Dillabaugh?
Yeah, I have a concern too, being way over budget, like $157,000. And like, you're saying that it was a carbon tax in 2019, 2020. Who missed the carbon tax? Coco Paving or us? Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer that?
Certainly. If if you would, yes.
We tendered before the carbon tax went in last year, and as the carbon tax was going in this year. It was overlooked in our estimates, and we have now adjusted them. So we're the ones that overlooked it, and we also, as we stated in the report, last year we ran short on digouts, on gravel to repair the digouts, so therefore the prices were up on the quantities that we estimated. But we made sure we had lots of quantity gravel in there, and the carbon tax pushed us up, I'd say about 60% from my calculations.
The carbon tax was 60% of the 157,000?
Of the difference in our
Difference?
estimated unit rates, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything except labor has carbon tax on it now, and it has forced me anyways, and I'm sure Gord, to recalculate anything but labor as far as estimates go, so.
and when did this tender go out for 2020?
It was, says right in front of that report.
March 23rd.
March 23rd it was issued, a week before the carbon tax went into place.
So March 23rd, jeepers, our gas was worth nothing, diesel was worth nothing. You think that would change, especially with the asphalt plants?
The asphalt plants don't run on a barrel of oil price that we get for the pumps. The asphalt plants run on asphalt cement prices, and they don't vary like we see at the gas station, and they're not down right now, they're actually up a little bit.
I'm disappointed that far.
Mr. Mayor?
I am too.
Through the chair to Jim, so, okay, so just for my understanding through the budget, because Steve completely took my question. On a $476,000 project,
Yes.
the additional $157,000, so the equivalent of 33% of that project, is carbon tax?
Yes.
And so that's something that we will be facing, so 33%, so we're gonna see a 33% rise in all of our paving operations going forward.
Anything outside, we will see rise because carbon tax is added to all the materials we buy. No, he's right when he does that calculation that way.
So that's an enormous hit, an implication for our 2021, 2022, 2023 budgets, and I'm a little shocked that it was missed for this one. I mean, we had a pretty hot budget discussions and in a very difficult labor task, and falling short 160K now, I find a little concerning. I get it, and you've owned it, I'd be wrong if I didn't say that I'm a little, it bothers me. But it's certainly something that we've gotta look at going into 21, 22, and 23, that's gonna have huge implications, and by putting off projects or deferring projects even further, not doing them, all it does is compound that problem.
It does.
That's correct.
And Mr. Chair, I missed 2 hits on carbon tax on the unit rates, and one of the reasons that this year our department is gonna do work on our roads master plan, and also that'll take care of the estimates and the concern with pricing and the estimates.
Because we thought we overestimated.
I had overestimated quantities to make sure we didn't fall into the same boat as last year.
Right.
And thought that we could still eke it out, but remember last year we tendered before carbon tax on July 1st, so we wouldn't have seen it then. We had July 1st, plus we had April 1st affect our rates this year, so, it is what it is. And, we're gonna make sure that the proper information is in our, update of our roads master plan.
That's a number shocking to me.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to get in here? No? Mr. Mr. Dillabaugh, you, okay, we have a recommendation in front of us. I'm looking for a mover for the recommendation, please. I'm not seeing a mover for the recommendation. So, we have no mover. That means we have no seconder. Pardon the pun. So, staff, I'm looking,
Pretty much have to support the staff, I'll move the recommendation.
thank you. Could I now have a seconder?
I'll second it.
I have a seconder with Mr. Packwood, thank you, Mr. Packwood. So I have a mover and a seconder, I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
that recorded, please.
Recorded vote. Counselor Dillabaugh,
No.
Nay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yay.
Mr. Packwood,
Yay?
and Deputy Mayor,
Yay.
and myself is a yay. So it's carried 4-1. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Okay, now we're going to move on to our next item, which is 7G, and this is the 2020 Capital Truck truck number 3, tandem snowplow tender. The recommendation is in front of you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes,
Quite concerned about the fact that we only have one tender here. And I'm looking at the briefing note, and it says on the paragraph headed background, the tender was issued on March the 3rd and published through the Brockville Recorder and Times on March the 7th. Tender notifications were sent to Ford, International, and Peterbilt dealers in the area. One addendum was issued clarifying axle weights and rear end ratios, kind of important. My question is, was this tender not put out electronically through Merck or one of the other provincial electronic tendering mechanisms? I know that most or a lot of the bigger companies just react really to the electronic system these days.
and I thought we had used that in the past also, but I could be wrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we didn't put it through Merck's. We thought by going straight to the dealers that deal in these vehicles was a better way of getting the word out there. Unfortunately, we only got the one response, and but I think a very good number, like a very good bid price.
Okay, so, well, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
while Mr. Gus is on his feet, the county, these are, I would call this equivalent to what the county calls heavy trucks.
Correct.
Yeah. How does this price compare with the price, the county did 3 of them, I think. How does this price compare with the price that county got? And that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is there any reason we don't just add our requirement to the county so that, we're getting the advantage of bulk ordering?
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, our tender spec is not the same as the county's. They have more of the highway rig, and they actually tender these with dual spinners, 20 each side. We don't have the need for that. My understanding from talking to the county was that their truck, the trucks that they get, even with the extras, our truck is still is lower than what they get if we take off, maybe the analysis between, we don't use that, we don't use the liquids, so we don't have the saddlebags inside the dump box. But it's still less, and I might add that this truck is exactly the same truck that we tendered last year, and it is even less than the truck we tendered last year with an automatic transmission. So,
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Please move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
I have
Question first.
Deputy Mayor Deschamps to comment here.
Through the chair to Jim, has there been, I mean, we tendered in meter specs, we only had one response. Has there been any thought, or is there a possibility that townships may find themselves in situations like we are right now where they cancel requests for builds that they had possibly had gotten into and now find themselves in cash flow crunches where they're looking at ways of deferring to next year or things like that in their budgets? Has there been any consideration to, you know, maybe making a recommendation that we reissue the tender and see if we can find, you know, a canceled project that meets our specs?
and we've thought and had lots of discussions about that, and I think if I just point out to you the dollar rate, number one, it is $1.32. We're locked in at $1.32 Canadian per American dollar. Today, I didn't check today, but certainly last week when we finalized this report, it was $1.42. I don't see the Canadian dollar recovering for a few years, let alone when this COVID virus issue is taken care of. So I believe we've got a really good price, and I just, you know, I can't comment on what other municipalities are gonna do, but I can comment on the fact that this one is cheaper than the one we bought last year, so, with an automatic transmission.
Oh. Mr. Chair,
Thank you, yes, go ahead.
before you sit down, Jim, you said that it was a good price,
Yes, sir?
but then we put in our budget for 95,000.
No, this is truck
What's
3,
the next one?
that's the next one,
Okay, yeah, I see.
this is the 10, okay?
Still.
It's number 3.
So just to note, the increase is around $14,000, just based on the dollar calculation.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? We do have a mover, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that, and a seconder by Councillor Hunter. I'm going to call the question. You've had a chance to go over the recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Carried. Thank you, Mark. Okay, now we come to the next one, and it is 7H. And I think there'll be some discussion about this, but 7H with a recommendation for the Public Works Capital Truck Number 11 snowplow tender. And who is going to, who would like to highlight this for us? Mr. Shaw or
Sure.
Mr. Grant? Yes, brother.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this action item was to review the 22,500 gross vehicle weight single axle truck T11 sander and plow tender bid. Background: the replacement of T11 received pre-budget approval to tender at budget meeting 4. Using a multitask approach for developing the tender specification, it was proposed that this unit would be assigned to a full winter plow route and eliminate the need to replace truck 8, which is mainly used during the winter months. The tender was issued March 3rd and published through the Brockville Recorder Times on March 7th. In addition, tender notifications were sent to Ford International Peterbilt dealers in the area. Tender included trade-ins of trucks T11 and T8. One submission was received before the 4 p.m. closing on March 17th. The submission was opened publicly just after the closing time. Financial considerations: the 2020 budget estimate for this capital purchase was $95,000. The cost of the truck meeting the required specifications tendered higher than the amount budgeted in the 2020 capital budget. Several attempts to negotiate cost savings were undertaken by staff but were unsuccessful. alternatives, the council could wish to proceed with the award of the tender to Rush Truck Centers and to cover the difference from the Public Works reserves. Recommendation, that committee recommends that council formally cancel tender ECPW 2005 single axle snowplow. Direct staff to plan and rebudget for T11 replacement in 2021. And direct the treasurer to transfer budget amounts of $95,000 into the Public Works Capital Reserve to fund the purchase in 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. So the bottom line is here, you want to cancel this?
Correct.
Totally.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
I have a mover. Do I have a?
I'll second, but
I
I have
have
a
a
question.
seconder.
I have a question.
And, okay, let's do the question. Let's do the question before I
Through,
call.
through the chair to Mr. Shaw. So again, in a way, like, almost double what the suggested, amount that we budgeted for. Why are we so off in our, we thought we could get it done for 95,000. Why can't we? I mean, that was what we made our budget decisions based on, was a recommendation at 95,000, it comes in at 171, that's a lot. And I struggle with that when we get the information and go through at a budget.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's definitely an overage here. What we're trying to do is take two trucks
Yep.
and make into one.
Yep.
Okay, get rid of a rolling stock that we don't have any use for during the summer months, okay? Those trucks would be over $300,000 to replace, those two trucks, okay? So when I went about this, and we developed the spec, we developed it such that we could condense it into this truck, both units, so that it could work all year round. What I've learned through this process is in order to get the payload during the winter months, sand and salt mix, I needed to go to a bigger dump body, a combination dump body spreader. And that's where the difference is on this. So $46,000 is the difference in what I had planned for, which was a slide-in sander and a dump body versus a complete combination sander, which is more beneficial to our operations anyways. And it provides the payload to get around to the route that it's going to be assigned to. So the overage is in that dump body, and it's something that I learned going through this process of developing this spec that we need to start again and re-tender next year.
Yes, yeah, and then, well, could I go to Councillor Hunter first? Or is it a follow-up question?
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay,
It's a bit of a
Deputy Mayor, go
follow-up.
ahead.
So we approved the plan in the budget to remove two trucks and save some money.
Yep.
And now we're not gonna replace one of those trucks. And so are we still going to, or what are the implications of us not approving this? And will we still be able to plow the roads, and what are the potential, I mean, we wanted to get them out of there because they were costing us so much money in maintenance. I mean, it's conceivable that it could cost us $40,000 in maintenance to maintain those trucks by deferring this one. So what,
And I think
before I make this decision,
Yeah. So you're absolutely correct. We do have the money in the budget to maintain these trucks. Don't forget, we won't see this truck for 25 weeks, okay, which is the delivery time on a vehicle. So we've kept the money in the budget for maintenance of the two trucks that we're making into one. So that's covered off.
so we're safe for this year. if
We're
we-
safe for this year unless something blows up. I mean, I can't guarantee that anything here, other than if it takes on normal maintenance operations, then we will be within budget.
Yeah, it's just, I struggle to, you know, we made decisions in January, February based on what this would accomplish for us at those tendered prices, you know, saving that 50,000. I'd hate to find ourselves in a position where we spend this 50,000 on maintenance of old vehicles that we're just gonna get rid of next year.
Maintenance of the old vehicles.
Continued or unforeseen maintenance then of these, you know, aged vehicles that we made decisions based on earlier. I'm struggling.
I don't know if we ended up putting it in the report, but certainly if there's anything that comes up on either of these vehicles, we'll bring back to council. A major, of course, I mean, they go through their PMs and whatever maintenance and
That's
stuff.
budgeted.
But anything major would have to come back to this council to be approved, and that would be another decision point. And I'm disappointed that we didn't get this done either, because it was, I think the right thing to do is move into the vehicle that we had proposed.
Counselor Hunter?
Well, I really struggle with this is in the construction business. I'm sorry, Jim, but I'm really struggling with it. You didn't foresee this before you brought this tender forward, that you weren't gonna need a heavier truck to carry what you wanted to do when you come up with this $95,000 price tag. I struggle with that, and I really struggle with the recommendation of the council on this truck, even though it is $58,580 over our budget here. I'm like Deputy Mayor Dish. So, we're doing this to get rid of trucks to save money. And granted, you have basic repairs in there, but if one of these trucks go down, and it's transmissions or rear end or motor or something like that, we're still gonna have to fix that truck, because we gotta keep the roads plowed for the year. And that's just money threw down a hole for nothing, so I know it's not, have to take it out of reserves or someplace to get that 58,000, but I really struggle with not going ahead and replacing this with something else, because I hate to see us spend a whole bunch of money on these two trucks, so.
Anything else, Counselor? Mr. Mayor?
Okay, so I moved the recommendation, and it is seconded, but I'm like Counselor Hunter, and to some extent like Deputy Mayor Deschamps. I'm looking for a mechanism here. So we've just heard the director tell us that it's a 25-week delivery on this thing anyway. I'm wondering why we couldn't use the amount that we budgeted for this year, which is the 95,000, to order the cabin chassis and get that underway with the understanding that the appurtenances, the dump body, etc., the cabin and chassis would be a 2020 purchase, and the appurtenances would be a 2021 purchase. We would ask the supplier to somehow split the invoicing so that it was split over the 2 years. It's going to be 25 weeks till we receive it, which is very close to the end of the year anyway. So we're what are we, 52 weeks in a year? We're not quite at 26 yet, but we're getting close.
It's gonna be this budget though, Mr. Mayor.
Well, yeah, I know, but sometimes they'll delay an invoice, and 25 weeks delivery is actually pretty optimistic, really, for,
It might be 30.
Especially this year.
yeah, it might be, yeah, especially this year. So I'm just wondering if we can't be a little bit creative here and split this purchase over 2 budget years. Get this vehicle at least in the hopper, so to speak.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I guess to answer the mayor's question, yes, we can try to do something like that. It's sort of outside of our policies to do it that way. Might recommend that we re-tender it. We still have time. There's not a lot of activity in the new truck business. Even this afternoon, just before I came to this meeting, the deficit's down to under 30,000 now, with some work that I've done with the supplier of the dump box. So I've been able to get that, pull that down. So we have a choice of, and get the same product that we want. My biggest concern is, and sort of answer back to you, Tori, I want to get the right truck. I don't want to put something out there that is half-baked, half the job. I want to get the truck out there, so, that meets our needs. I don't know, you tell me if I should stop, Dave, but where we can go with this is either re-tender, or is there a possibility of negotiation, Dave, with our policy?
Well,
Go ahead.
if there was only one tender, and the tender is not closed yet, it's still an open tender.
Correct.
So you still have, in my opinion, of the tendering process, because there was only one tender, you still have the right to negotiate pricing. And if you're telling me now that you've reduced this differential from 58 down to 30, that's a major thing for me. Because I'm now, at that point, prepared to say, okay, well, we'll take the 30 out of the Public Works Capital Reserve, if necessary, if we get the final invoice before the end of the year. We'll take that differential out of the Public Works Reserve, put it back in immediately in January as a number one transfer to reserves in January. So, I mean, I think that you have the right to continue to negotiate. That's one point, Mr. Chairman. The other point that I have, and I don't want to lose it in this discussion, the original tender called for the two replacement trucks, T11 and T8, to be taken on trade. Is there a possibility that that's what's messed this up in some manner? Sometimes the large dealers really don't want the trades. Was that a factor here?
To you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe so.
No, okay.
My research we are getting approximately 50 to 60% on the dollar for those trade-ins, which is normal, and it's been my experience in my 40 years in this business that that's a good rate. What they would put it on the lot for to sell is 40% higher and probably take 30. And I've chatted with them about this, going to an auction, all that sort of stuff, and that's money we have in our pocket right now.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at.
Did we have a value of the trade-in, of the two?
I do, if you want that?
Well,
They're not very high.
No, it wouldn't be.
T11 is $3,500, I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's better than 200.
But
Better,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
it's better than 200 or having to bring it back home, so
Yep.
if you just bear with me, I can, that's not the one I figured to open the wrong one.
Mr. Chairman, while Mr. Guest is looking for this,
Yes.
the recommendation is on the floor. Would it be in order to have a motion to defer the recommendation, give Mr. Guest a week to do his renegotiation, and have the tender, the recommendation come directly before council a week from today?
I think I seconded
Beg your pardon?
I seconded them.
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, but there's still,
No,
the
you
chair
didn't,
can still,
no, you didn't, John Hunter seconded it.
oh, but the chair can still entertain a motion to defer. Did you second? Who's the second?
I thought
I
it was
second.
John, but I guess, okay, I could have written that down wrong.
Somebody can still bring forward a motion to defer to
Sure.
council of the, April the 27th.
So, Mr. Guest, did you find that figure?
I did. For trade-in number one, the 2007 Ford dump plow sander, which is truck 11, is with tax rebate in, $39.55.
Wow.
Ooh, yeah. And the
And-
next one?
And the truck, 8 Peterbilt, 2003 Peterbilt is $9,040.
Ooh,
Take it.
So,
I think we should
that,
take that.
and I did do the, I can't remember if it's red book or black book. And both of those, you pretty much double, pretty close to double.
Wholesale's wholesale.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I believe Counselor Dillabaugh wanted to get in here. Just before you, Mr. Packwood, did you want to get in on this discussion as well?
No, I'm good, I'm listening to what's going on here.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to get the queue lined up here. Mr. Dillabaugh?
I just have one thing, bring up what Mr. Mayor said. Is there, I don't understand it, but is there, should we try to go on that Merck electronic code on this?
Well, that might be, I have a question which may fit right into that. And my question is this, I'm very disappointed that we're only getting one tender back. How come?
So through the chair, to answer with respect to Merck's, if council recalls last year, the truck went on Merck's, and we ended up with one bid. Unfortunately, that was one of the reasons why we didn't go on Merck's.
Again,
This year, we hope to go direct out so that we would potentially avoid that potential of just one submission. Unfortunately, I can't speak to why certain companies are not submitting.
because in this day and age, I just find it difficult. We go up to, I believe we said 3 or 4, and we only get one back. I really have a problem with that.
Point of clarification.
Go ahead.
Is there any prohibition against going to Merck and going directly? I mean, can we not do all?
Sure.
Through the chair, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we certainly could.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
It's just,
Yeah.
it makes it difficult if there's addendums to make
Yeah.
sure that everybody.
Yeah, I can see the problem for addendums,
Yeah,
but,
like Merck's is certainly better in the sense of tracking,
yeah.
right, with the stamps.
In any case, Mr. Chairman, let's not
Yes.
forget the fact that Mr. Guest has negotiated the difference down to now being 30,000 instead of 58.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I did walk the tender down to Peterbilt myself.
Yeah, no, I just
Anyway,
I just find it difficult that these guys are not bidding. It just,
Why?
yeah, just, boy.
Price.
You talked to her, the lady that runs the shop down there, forget her name, she lives on 2 there, right at Shanley Road there.
Yeah.
Jen, and,
Yeah.
she's dumbfounded why the head office didn't price. Even if we had a bid, we could work with it, so.
Let's be realistic, look around the country, dump trucks running for the construction companies and the plow trucks running, how many aren't internationals? Peterbilt and them can't compete with the price.
Oh, is that what it is?
Who's gonna compete with Rush? He's the largest truck dealer from Toronto East, so,
Yeah, but nobody knows that he submitted a bid though.
no,
Oh.
they know he's gonna submit, but everybody in the
Well, they
bid
guess
knows
he
who's
would.
bidding, so. The gravel contracts, everybody knows who the other guy is that bid. It's no surprise when they feel the open up, they all know who's bidding.
And they pretty much know the pricing. too.
Yeah, they pretty well know when they come in, we got the contract or not, so.
Anyway, thanks, I guess that answers my question too, it, just dumbfounded. Okay, so, I'm a little on the confused side here, are we going to change the
You
motion?
guys
I make a motion to defer till the council meeting on the 27th for, price.
I second the motion to defer.
It was seconded by Deputy Mayor,
The motion to defer?
yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, yeah, motion by John and Tori, Okay, so, staff, have you got that motion changed?
Well, no, it's a separate motion.
Are we going to vote on the original motion? and
Can,
then-
you have two motions on the floor right now.
Yeah,
You have the original motion,
right,
and then you have a motion to defer it, to defer the decision on it until the council meeting of April the 27th. So you call the question on the motion to defer first,
yes,
and then if it passes, we come back with the same recommendation at the council meeting on the 27th.
okay, that's fine. Okay, I have a motion and a seconder to defer. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Packwood. So, it's deferred to the council. Okay, that concludes our action and information items, and we now move to number 8, which is the councilor inquiries, notices of motion. Do I hear it? Hearing none, I'll move on to number 9, which is the mayor's report.
No report.
And we have the mayor's report,
Oh,
which leads us to question period. And we have no question period, and we have no closed session. So, brings us to item 12, which is adjournment. And do I have a mover to adjourn?
so moved.
I have a mover, do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Mr. Packwood.